Unearned privilege. In other words, you have this pathology in white people that they are inherently superior. So it produces this very sick and warped, distorted perspective of their relationship to everything else in the universe. And like people believe that, the sun revolved around the earth. White people think that everything revolves around them. It's the same thing. And it's as ignorant as earth being flat. So what it produces in white people is a pathology of unearned privilege to such a degree that they are confused when they're not entitled from their vantage point to run it, to control it, to benefit. You see, they believe you have right now. Matter of fact, if you look at the neo-Nazi movement and the rise of the skinhead generation, that whole crew, which is, by the way, growing exponentially as well, but we're not hearing about that. But you will hear about the Crips and the Bloods and oh my God, those Mexican gangs. Nobody's talking about the Klan, which is tripled, and keep a close look at the Tea Party. So what I'm saying here is that you have young people that now, because of the economic situation that, by the way, Europeans placed America in, that are now going, well, wait a minute. Every generation has always been able to benefit more, to somehow have more, to somehow, get more as it relates to being white. So now you have white males that are saying, well, my God, I can't even afford to buy a home in the same neighborhood of my parents. Whose fault is that? Oh, it must be, well, it's those immigrants. Just look at them, do the math and look at what's going on in this country. It must be those immigrants. Because you see, I, as a white male, having earned nothing, am deserving of more than them. That's the pathology. Even though they've actually produced nothing, they believe that they have this unearned privilege, that I should have the best job. I should be able to just, regardless of my credit, go in and get a house in any part of the country that I wish. I should have the preferential treatment. That is unearned privilege that they're expecting to have. And when they're unable to get that unearned privilege, they explode and implode. Hence, the gentleman that flew his plane into the IRS. You mess with my objects, the things that I believe that I'm supposed to have, I implode and explode. And unfortunately, as it relates to people of color and particularly people of African descent in this country, they become then, the scapegoat for it. It's them. Oh, yeah. And it's those Mexicans coming across the border that suddenly are becoming a problem because I can't get my unearned privileges. I can't get those needs met, which means that I should have bigger, better, newer, more. Unearned privilege, and it metastasizes into a pathology that again results in sometimes outward violence or inward violence.
Let me ask you, if you would, to deal briefly with the economics of miseducation, even within the school budget itself. New York State has a school budget of $80 billion. And so school education is a multi-billion-dollar industry. How does this racism play in the economy, in the distribution of all of that?
Well, we have to keep a perpetual underclass. And so, even if you were to look at, it's very interesting, the correspondence of Jefferson and Adams, you start looking at who they call the founding fathers, and you look at their edict. They said, a man should be able to, and they agree. They said to just let them believe they're free. This is white people. They said, just let them believe they're free. Let them stand on the corner and scream to the top of their lungs that they have their rights to free speech, and let them speak. But we don't have to hear them. So it's an interesting reality as it relates to the economy, because America's always had to have an underclass. The new permanent underclass swiftly becoming the Latino Hispanic population, who is now competing for the bottom. And it's amazing with African American people, because when you start looking at Carnegie, the folks who actually developed our original structure of education. They weren't trying to build corporate folks and people who are going to advance to be scholars. They wanted blue collar workers to work in their factories. That's what the goal of American education was. This is not, this is not hidden. All you have to do is read what they've said about it. They said they're not trying to produce people who are going to go out and be their competitors. They wanted to raise the level of education just so much so that they could work for them, for the things they ran. Ford industry. And you start looking at all these folks. It wasn't about trying to produce a mature mind that would then become their competitors. No. And so it doesn't surprise me because, and the truth is, it hasn't changed. You see, in that system, that construct, it's flawed. Everyone knows it's flawed. And yet there's been no attempt. Why? To just overhaul the whole thing. I tell people, I said, listen, just don't do whatever they're doing in school and you'll do better. Honestly, just come up with something different and you'll do better, because we already know what it's producing. And it's certainly not producing mature minds on any count. And just because you can jump through the hoops and you can even, cross the T and dot the I and get the A does not mean that you're educated. You see, so I'm saying, at what point do we look at the system? But to look at that would then begin to look at those that created it. And they too would be flawed. And as if we don't know that they were inherently racist people in the first place, who were bent on a material existence that they completely controlled and benefited from, and that their heirs would benefit from. And that's not even all white people. They didn't even want all white people to benefit from it. Only a select elite few. So this is the structure of American education. And yet no one has saw fit to go, well, maybe we need to rework this. Right. Well, who would benefit? You? It's like when you look at this, this is a perfect example of it. When in Ethiopia, we saw the huge drought, the horrific, advancement of the desert, if you will, in Ethiopia. They knew about that 20 years before it happened, at least 20 years before it ever occurred. And the reason why I know that is my sister was among some of the young people who were brought in on the scientific inquiry about what was going on regionally, geographically in that area. She studied in school that eventually the desert, they saw it happening. So, yes. So let's ask this question. It's a fundamental question. If they knew 20 years before it happened that it was going to happen, why didn't they intervene? Why didn't they, say, well, y'all might want to move, or maybe start building an infrastructure that could sustain itself? Well, here's a question you have to ask, which is what every country in the world, imperialistic, regardless of whether they're capitalist, communist, I don't care who they were. They looked and they went, any oil there? I don't know. I'm sorry. Diamonds? Were there any diamonds there? Let's see. Are there any natural resource? Gold? None of that? Then why would we?